Hi everyone, I'm Mandi Hutchinson, and today I'll be doing a preview of the game Halls of Horror, coming to Kickstarter May 15th, 2019. Hall of Horror is designed by Krzysztof Ziba and published by iFun4All. Before we jump in, iFun4All wanted me to share a few fun tidbits about the Kickstarter. The Kickstarter version of the game will have a solo mode and be playable for a 1 to 4 player configuration. For 48 hours, early backers will have a free soundtrack made by the Witcher video game soundtrack composer. There will be a pledge that will include 3D STL files for self 3D printing. Stretch goals will include more minis, more locations, and may include additional game modes. In Hall of Horrors, players individually try to find 2 keys and the exit and try to be the first person to escape. Conversely, if all players die, the game ends and the killer wins. First, separate the starting rooms and the 2 exit cards, then shuffle the remaining room cards, choosing side A or B, and draw 14. Now add the 2 exit cards to the 14 cards and shuffle. Set the 4 starting rooms in the corners and room cards in a 4x5 grid. Shuffle the Master of Ceremony deck, the Reward card deck, the Master of Ceremony gift tokens, and then place these items along with the Items deck, Bullet, Shell, Key, Exhausted Reward/Room tokens, Resolve tokens, and Weapons cards within reach of all players. Players receive their character's card, the corresponding figurine, 4 dice, the attack and escape cards, and a set of 5 action cards. Each character card has special powers. However, for our purposes in this video, we'll be playing with the basic side. Place a health token on the 10 space of your health track and take a resolve token. Choose a first player and take turns placing your character on one of the starting rooms. The killer card is placed near the top of the board and starts with a health of 10 and the lowest rage level. The first player takes a first player card and the killer and places it in a spot on the middle of the board of their choice. Every turn of the game is played in 3 phases: Action Selection Phase, Action Resolution Phase, and Master of Ceremony Phase. This is where we decide what we would like to do: move, search, or engage in combat. If you start in a room alone, you will be choosing search or movement. Players who are in a room with another player or the active killer must choose one of their combat action cards. Cards played are revealed simultaneously, and we move on to the action resolution. Starting with the first player, each player resolves their action before moving in clockwise order to the next player, with the exception of combat action. More on this later. The 7 available actions are move up, move down, move left, move right, search, attack, which is part of combat, or escape, again, part of combat. In addition to resolving an action, the player can also spend resolve to modify the resolution of the action. In order to discover new locations, players will need to enter into an unexplored room and flip the card face up. What type of room did we uncover? If it's a regular room, their turn ends and play proceeds to the next player. Some rooms are locked after a player enters it for the first time in the game, and they are alone in that room at the end of a turn. These are usually puzzle rooms. In this case, the player would mark the room as locked, but are usually open again once the player solves the puzzle during their turn. If a player is in a locked puzzle room, their only option is to search in order to solve the puzzle and open the room so they can keep exploring. A player can perform a search action and do any of the following: search their current room, attempt to solve a puzzle room they are currently locked in, pick up a face-down MC gift token and resolve it, search a dead character's body to recover their items, use the first aid kit item, and finally discard the panic status card. When you search a regular room, you draw as many reward cards as the number stated on the room, decreasing the number by 1 if you have the panicked status card. And resolve the following steps: discard reward cards not represented on the room card. Compare the remaining cards to the rewards represented on the room. If there is a majority of one type of symbol that is pictured, receive that reward. If there are the same number of copies of all eligible cards, the player receives the leftmost reward represented. If none of the drawn cards are represented on the room card, or if the reward is a card that the player already owns, the player receives 1 resolve token instead. Once the reward is awarded, the player marks that reward on the room card with the exhausted reward token if it is a one-time reward. The whole room can become exhausted if no further rewards can be obtained. Once exhausted, rooms cannot be searched. Players can use resolve tokens to draw 2 additional reward cards before accepting the reward. Then they may spend additional resolve tokens to draw 1 more card for each token spent. Before they accept the reward, they may also remove 1 card from the ones they drew, no matter how much resolve they spent. So, what do the shapes, or nothing, around the rewards mean? No outline indicates that a reward is unlimited and can be found any number of times in this room over the course of the game. A square indicates that the reward can only be found once, and after being awarded to a player, that space is covered by an exhausted reward token. An octagon indicates that this reward can be found once and exhaust the room when it is found. In this case, the player places an exhausted room token on the room's search value. In a puzzle room, the player draws as many cards from the reward deck as the number on the room indicates and is looking for at least 2 reward cards of the same kind. If the player fails to draw 2 identical symbols, they remain locked in the puzzle room this turn. Take one of the exhausted reward tokens and place it on the leftmost space on the room card. The number under the reward that was covered indicates how many cards the player draws next turn. If a search action is performed in a room where a dead character's body is found, a player can recover all of their belongings with a search action. Searching a dead character always grants a guaranteed key. Once searched, the character is removed from the board. Search actions can be used to pick up an MC gift token that has been placed in a room. Flip the token and receive the printed reward. Then discard the token out of the game. Who's ready to attack? Or maybe escape? Whenever 2 or more players or any number of players in the killer are in the same room at the beginning of a turn, these players will take an attack or escape action. Cards are selected and revealed as normal. Each combat action can result in a success, a tie, or a fail. To determine the result of a combat action, both players roll 4 dice each and consult the card they played to determine what results count as successes. Each die that comes up with the indicated result is considered a success. The player with the most successes gets to use their chosen card's success result. In a case of a tie, the effect of both cards' tie result is applied. In combat, resolve tokens can be spent to reroll failed dice. There are 2 categories of weapons in the game: melee weapons and firearms. When a player chooses to use a single weapon in combat, they use that weapon's success chance and damage instead of the basic attack card values. A firearm requires an ammo token, and 1 ammo token is discarded before rolling your dice, regardless of the result of the combat round in which the weapon was used. The Killer. The Killer is controlled by the first player or the Master of Ceremony after the death of the first character in the game by spending killer icons found on the Master of Ceremony cards. Uh-oh, you're in the same room as the Killer. What to do? The Killer rolls a number of dice indicated by their current rage, so between 3 and 5 dice, counts successes like a player would, but cannot use resolve to reroll any results. The Killer always deals damage indicated by their current rage, 2 to 4 damage, on a success. They can never stop a character from escaping, but they deal damage normally when a player escapes with less successes than them. If a player manages to reduce the Killer to 0 health points, the Killer has met their demise. The Killer is immediately stunned and their rage is reset to the first position on the track. If the Killer is at 0 health points and a player has 1 Killer icon, depicted on the Master of the Ceremony card, they must use it to bring the Killer to at least 1 health point as a priority. As a reward, the player receives a key. A key can only be gained this way once per game. After all actions for the current turn are resolved, the first player draws a card from the Master of Ceremony deck and resolves its effect. If at least 1 character is dead, the player who controlled that character becomes the Master of Ceremony instead and takes the Master of Ceremony card. That player draws a number of Master of Ceremony cards equal to the number of deceased characters plus 1, selects one to play, and puts the others at the bottom of the deck. If all characters have met their untimely demise at the hands of the killer, the game ends. Or, when a player has at least 2 keys and then finds a pair of reward cards in their draw, they have successfully searched the exit. The game is over at the end of the action resolution phase, and the escaped player wins the game. I hope you enjoyed my preview of Hall of Horror, coming to Kickstarter May 15th, 2019. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.